you for being with us here today.
Thank you, sir. Have a great day.
Positive outcome, and so that's the advice I give them.
So, Jim, everyone else says to you, oh, Jim, you're having been.
Thank you, Michael, for letting me hand off. I had zero preparation on that one. I didn't even know who I was talking to. So you are
It's called the Jimmer Room. Yes, it is. I've been there, and I remember when Josh brought me over there. It was like, hey, I wanted to show you this. Said right on the door, it's the Jimmer Room. This is where we close. And I was like, ever since then, I knew I should be here. But I knew this is what I need to do. But I'm learning as much as I can. Obviously, I've invested in companies and I've done a lot of investing myself in tech and marketing, a lot of things. So I'm not completely new to this. I've been doing it a little bit. But I'm excited to learn from two great partners who have been in it for a long time and know what they're doing. But I hope to be able to help and bring a positive attitude and competitive spirit.
So, you've been at this for a while. You're going to be in Utah a lot.
Absolutely. I'm always here. I'm always in Utah. I love it here. Obviously, my BYU connection, I'm always coming to football games, basketball games, all those things. But, I'm here meeting with people and talking, and obviously I have some crazy friends that live here. I'm here
talking about this in front of the mic. Let's go.
I am actually coming to homecoming. I am coming to homecoming.
I'm getting an award.
Oh, what award? Can we announce it? And Silicon Slopes is with us for.
Where do you want us?
Right
here. This one's going to be a fireside chat.
I know you've been an inspiration to so many young people. I already told you about my boys and how you inspired them.
You know the cool thing about this is when we can have unscripted, complete collisions that could be complete disasters, but I don't think they will be. I have to my right, that's probably your left unless we're here today, Mr. Michael Dowling. I have to my left here Mr. Ted McAleer, who I've called by other last names today that have been inappropriate. And of course myself, Joel McKay Smith. The reason that we're here today in the Accelerate Aspirability and Audicon Suite is to talk about a number of different things. This one is very, very dear to my heart because I was part of this scene. In 1998, we were approached by a group of technologists, primarily from the Los Angeles area, that were involved in primarily music. And this included Lance Sloan from Time Warner, Jeffrey Connery from Warner Chappell, Red Envelope, some executives from Novell, some people from AT&T, and they figured out how to get me a circuit to the old Memorial Building in Harrios that nobody had done before. They brought in an array and built servers so that they could cache the entire internet with any keyword that was associated with anything Sundance, and they successfully did it. It appeared like we had the fastest internet in the world, but we didn't. We were just caching that information in this array with these different PC, mini PC type of things at the Interactive Lounge. We switched out the area 3 times a day, so we had a morning, we had an evening, and we had an overnight. And many inappropriate things happened. It was a lot of fun. But what happened from that, let's wait for the music to go down, we'll just dance. Or do one of these. No, we can't hear. So the thing is that...
Are we back live again?
We're live.
Okay. Can you hear us or not? Okay. Well,
Sprocket!
so you did introduce that we're talking about the history of technology in Park City.
I did not.
No.
Did I just start pontificating?
It's okay. This is good.
We just need to weave it in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Quickly, we need to make sure people know what the topic is. But that's all right. This is the Joel Meister way of doing things. We've been your wingman before.
But I love that part of the conversation because it's so fascinating. It's the beginning, right?
Yeah.
And you were there at the early stage. That's what I want to be able to.
And like the Music Man doesn't want to like share it, you know. What do they got going on down there?
Well, people are getting ready to break, I think, for lunch.
For lunch.
That's okay. Can you hear me enough? Can I go?
Yeah.
And here we go. The history.
12 to 2 is lunch and networking.
Oh, that's fine. We'll be good to go. The history of technology in Park City. A lot of things came out of Park City. There was some technology in mining that you could talk about in the late 1800s and the way they did different assays and stuff like that differently and stuff like that. But where I kind of come into it is actually in the mid 80s. I was doing dual pair SCSIs and retail systems, and that's kind of how I got my start in it. But that's not what we're talking about with this collision. We're talking about streaming. We're talking about streaming and entertainment. We're talking about music. We're talking about things like this, where we were doing foundational approaches before Real Player. It was direct push, generally, what's the Windows Media Player? But it was a
Real Player. Well, there was Real Player, right?
Yeah. And the conduit. And it's so cool, and that's why I'm wearing this. Because this is the original talisman that was made at Z Place when we had the first bar. You're joining this conversation, come on in. You're joining this conversation, come on in. Your timing's perfect.
How you doing?
Great. All right. Can you still hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So, in 1998, with a combination of Novell, AT&T, what was the baby bell at that time? Before CenturyLink.
Lucid?
Nope.
US West?
Yes. Boyd Charrington came up and established a circuit so that we could have reciprocal T1s to be able to feed this supercomputer array that was put together by Novell. And they, for the full week leading up to Sundance, took every keyword that they could find on Sundance and they crawled the entire internet. So anyone that was on that network, the first thing that they would see, and it wasn't even Google they were using, it was InfoSeek or something? Or?
Yeah, InfoSeek was right.
Yeah, InfoSeek. Oh well. We streamed every act that played that year and the next year. I mean, I can tell you stories about the guy from the Cult taking a pool stick and throwing it at Kirsten Dunst, who we had backstage because she was 20 and had to be an employee, and that's the way she could be in there. And he called her a fucking whore. Excuse me. Bounce, 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 bounce. True story.
Okay.
And things like that. But it was amazing, and people were getting decent baud rates and things like that.
Well, I was just going to say, the one thing that was really interesting about that time was I was a talent agent and bringing talent to the Sundance Film Festival and seeing the impact of that technology provide... Were we stealing home plate with that? Okay. I just want to make sure.
Well, we're going to have the Warriors coming after us.
Are we bunting or what? But seeing what you were doing in terms of revolutionizing, innovating around streaming media and giving artists the opportunity to be seen beyond kind of the gatekeepers of Hollywood, right?
Yeah.
That to me, when I saw that, really opened my eyes up to the opportunity for talent that maybe was bubbling below the surface to be seen beyond it, right? We are now in a place where the entertainment distribution of content has been democratized completely, but back then it really wasn't, and you were opening a conduit into artists being able to be
I wish
exposed.
I could take all the credit for it. There
Well,
were so
you
many
were
of us,
you were one of them, but that was the impetus for me to leave being an agent to start a content company on the internet early in those days. So this is it's warming my heart, nostalgically thinking about it.
So what was the content company that you created at that point?
It was a company called iFuse, and we did lifestyle content in different verticals. Our whole thing was about life and life style versus life stage. So it was about board sports back then, what we called it. It was about pop culture. It was about fashion.
I remember Conrad Rotterman was doing all the Gorge games and Frenzy and stuff like that in conjunction with it.
And our whole idea was that there is this massive group of kids coming up that are participating in these lifestyles and recording it. They had begun to record it with not their phones, but with videos and other things that they found, and they were creating their own content. It was the early stage.
The time frame on this was?
This was 98, 99.
We met in 98.
Yeah.
The first year. The next year was much more badass.
Okay.
And so it was about providing content for an audience that wasn't being well served through television at the time, right? I mean, and it was giving them the opportunity to be exposed and not just consume the content, but be a part of the content, right? It was really early stage.
Can we talk about lap dance? Do you know about lap dance?
No.
Okay, so Trey Parker and Matt Stone called me directly. They somehow got my mobile line. They said, "Hey, this is Matt and Trey." I'm going, "Yeah, bull." And it was. And they said, "We would like to have the 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. hours. I think it was a Thursday night, and we want to have a party and call it lap dance." And I thought it was friends, you know, punking me or something like that. And he says, we'll fly into town so we can scope it out. And I said, yeah, sure, whatever. And they was down. And they came up. They said, can we hang from those locations these great big air fresheners? They were 8 foot high, like pine cone air fresheners. He says, and can we put our sound system up here? And would you care if we brought in Les Claypool, and we'll call it the Holy Mackerels, and then we'll have a guy that looks like a padre that's drumming and stuff like that. And we promise no drugs. And so I went and got special permission because there were some really interesting rider items with this party. So I went up and I talked to the mayor, which is Brad Olch at the time, and the chief of police, that was Lloyd Evans. And I said, yeah, I mean, as long as everything's locked up, and as long as the rules of everything's brought off the tables by 1 o'clock, before 2 o'clock, we'd be delighted to have that kind of, and they were being smart apples, of clients, because it was South Park, you know. Fast forward to when we had everything set up, and the bands that they also brought in was Sammy Hagar, Chris Conaby could relate to it, but they were all A-list stadium bands. And they each had 20 minutes, and they played each other's instruments, and they had all this ad hoc stuff going on. I mean, that's what I heard was going on myself. I was sleeping downstairs in Kenny's condo. So I was just curious what might be happening up at Lap Dance, and I came upstairs at 3 o'clock. More than one of my waitresses and staff may not have had any clothing on them dancing. There may have been illicit subjects that had to do with credit cards not committing commerce.
I thought this was a family show.
It is a family show. That's why I'm speaking everything else.
There's
one last part. There's one last part.
Back to a family show.
Have we gotten out of 1998 yet?
Yeah, I think we've gone into a Joel McKay Smith rat hole here that we need to.
I'll finish it up.
Yeah.
Matt, Brad Olch and Lloyd Evans were on the stairs, and they each had a beer, and they said, "Could you at least try?" So I was the most unpopular man in the room, and I had to lock everything up and everything like that, and told the staff that they'd all be fired the next day if it didn't happen. But that was Lap Dance. Fast forward 2 years to 2001, the first Agile Summit. One of the organizers of all this was Jim Bannister, that we all know here, and they basically came up with the rules of engagement of how a new protocol for establishing sprints and everything else.
Yeah, it was an alternative to waterfall, right?
Yeah.
The methodology. That was the first.
Yeah.
That was the first, like, agile rules of engagement that were established, right, by that group.
I myself thought it was the fact because the people had seen me skiing, and I'm not very agile at all. But past that, I mean, gosh, rattle off some of the tech companies that have now come out of Park City since like 2001. I mean, there's got to be a bazillion. But what Bassam's doing is different. But I mean, there's.
Well, I mean, there's been a handful of companies that didn't start out as technology companies. You know, take backcountry as an example, right? There's a ton of technology that's enabling backcountry today, but initially, backcountry started in the Heber Midway area with a few ski bums and the
Jim Holland and Breezy and Baylog, yeah, it was pretty crazy.
Yep, and they, you know, ultimately they realized that they could have more of a platform in Park City than they had in the Heber Midway area. You know, I think probably others. I was not involved as much in tech in those early days in Park City. I was hanging out down here in Salt Lake for most of my time, but you've probably got
because
some
you had
more
Say-So
examples.
and you had
Yeah.
Jonathan Cardella.
I think what there was just an eclectic mix of really talented executives and that had great ideas, right? And one of the things that you did was help to provide an infrastructure for financing, right? Because up until that point, up until the Park City Angels, there was really no way you could find angels, individual angels, but there was no institutional structure to find financing, and I think that helped to really create a lot more opportunity for entrepreneurs, right, in Park City, and I think that's the legacy that you've been able to create.
Well, and that's when I guess my history of financing and technology in Park City really kicks off for me is 2007, and in 2007. Really, our vision was to create a network of what we called 50 to 75-year-old active semi-retirees, right? And that's how we first defined it. And kind of the persona of a 50 to 75-year-old active semi-retiree was somebody who had done well in industry, decided that they'd made enough money that they could move to Park City, so they came to Park City, built their big house, started to ski, fly fish, bike, not mountain bike at the time, and do all the great activities at Park City. And in general, they'd be there about 6 months, and then their spouse or partner would look at them and say, you know, we were a lot happier when you were busy and not just golfing and skiing and fly fishing. Can you find something to do professionally? And so Park City Angels, therefore, became their, you know, one of their professional outlets where they could meet with 40 other like-minded, you know, accredited investors and look at anywhere from 6 to 10 deals per month and try to determine which of those deals could be investable and could ultimately grow a company. So
Yeah, that's interesting. So I guess we found ourselves in just a conversation among the two of us. So what would you like to talk about then? We haven't really gotten past the history of technology in Park City. I'm not sure we'll get there, right?
I'm not
But-
sure we will either. I'm not, you know.
Joel's touch and go, right?
Yeah.
What I call touch and go management with him. He just comes into the picture, creates a lot of, you know, this is mess, and then asks us to kind of clean it up afterwards, right?
Well, so I remember when you and Jim Bannister sought funding from Park City Angels. I know we weren't smart enough to back the team of Jim and Michael at the time, but tell us a little bit about what you all were doing then. And I think that was probably circa 2008, 9, 10?
Yeah, 2008, I think it was, and you know, we've had the foresight to see a vision of the future, but the bad luck of being too early on a lot of things.
Right.
And so I think we were a little early on this, but what we were attempting to do was build a consumer research panel to using kind of affinity content and gamified loyalty dynamics. So a mixture of those two. Get people in based on the things that they care about, the things that they're passionate about, whether it is skiing or mountain biking or gaming. In this case, we were building gaming panels. And then gamify it. Give them some intrinsic reward for participation so they could feel something emotionally and more, you know, significantly than just purely cash. We'd also pay them cash, but we'd theme all of the rewards in their lifestyle. And what we did was built these really unique panels of hard to reach consumers that we were then selling to, you know, the likes of Coca-Cola and movie studios, because they were having a difficult time reaching these young consumers. So yeah, when we came to you guys, we were probably a little early in our fundraising, but it was an amazing experience, because the one thing I really appreciated about the Park City Angels was, yes, there were a bunch of people that maybe were trying to get out of the house and under you know, out of foot from, you know, their spouses, but there's some really great operationally minded and entrepreneurial minded people in that group that we learned a lot from. We pulled a lot of insight away from, and actually helped us to evolve that product. So, you know, Park City Angels was to me a great asset to have within Park City, particularly because there's just so many people up there that have great ideas and need the support and the infrastructure.
Yeah. Well, it has been fun. We just passed our 15-year mark as Park City Angels, and we've actually just finished our first fund, and so we're calling it the Park City Angels Fund 1, and it's a sidecar fund. And what it's going to enable us to do is allow angel investors to diversify their portfolio more quickly. So the challenge of angel investing is, you know, typically you have to write a check for a minimum of $25,000 because a entrepreneur does not want a lot of individual investors in their cap table.
Right.
And so if you start stroking a lot of $25,000 checks, and each of those checks is going to, you know, be in the company for somewhere between 8 to 10 years before you get your money back, you can see how that doesn't scale well. So what we decided to do is build on the excellence of some of our members relative to specific topics, and we said if an angel if three angels like the entrepreneur, like the deal, and decide to co-invest at a certain level, which is three angels going in for a total of $100,000 of investment. It could be one for 80, two for 10, but getting to 100,000, that actually triggers an investment from the sidecar fund. And so now, instead of, let's take that example, three angels decide they're putting in 100,000. Well, now the sidecar fund comes in for 100,000.
Oh, that's great.
And you now have $200,000 worth of capital to work with. Gives you a little bit more runway. And as Michael knows, runway is really important in a pre-seed, seed stage company, because you're still trying to get your handle on product market fit.
Yeah.
So back over to the Jim and Michael story, just to maybe wrap up. Where did you guys take your initial hypothesis into your product market fit, right? So what changed as a result of seeking capital and maybe pivoting a bit?
Yeah, I mean, do you need something, Joel?
I'm having our videographer join us for the last part.
Oh,
and there's
good.
a reason.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, let's bring him in.
Let's bring him in. I'm going to say Rod is here to talk about 7X, but it's really about the fact that he's had to put up with me 40 years because he's married to my cousin.
Okay.
And it's a fun Park City story because Gilbert Fletcher was my date, and you know the Fletchers that have all of the land where the High West Distillery, which is one of your investments. So I'm going to step out here because I'm prepping our next group, which is the Utah Warriors. But I'd like you guys to spend a little bit of time together talking about, well, you've been involved in a lot of gaming, would say so. Rod has got the SEC approval to be able to do a fantasy sports type of operation for startups. So let's have a little conversation for 5 minutes. Now I'll bring up the Utah Warriors. And I know where you've been with what you've done programming. So I just want you to have an open conversation about where this can be, how it can work. And I'm going to start using his platform to vet the companies that I'm vetting for you and for what we're doing. It's a surprise to you. And I'm sorry. I mean, I've hit you with one or two today.
I got this. We're good. So tell us.
I'm out of the frame.
Yeah. So tell us. Joel's just given us the Joel view of the platform that you're building. Give us your perspective on the platform that you're building and how it's going to enable entrepreneurs perhaps to get in front of more potential investors.
Well, what we did is we looked at the startup challenges, and it's tough to start a company, as you guys are well aware. You got a 90% failure rate, and the startups that get, VC funds or, angel funds or, that are fortunate enough to have you guys step up and say, you know what, we're going to put some money into this deal. But, they're very few and far between. But even then, there's a pretty high failure rate. So we thought, we don't have a really good vetting system for startups, number one. But we have a great vetting system for athletes. An athlete, before he sniffs a paycheck, he's been vetted for, 10, 12 years. And he's been in competition every week. And if he's got some flaws, if he doesn't fix those things, he's out. He's benched. He's got to fix things.
Right. So they're getting coaching all along the journey from
sure.
Very amateur athlete to pro athlete.
Exactly.
Whereas entrepreneurs perhaps are not getting coaching along
Well,
that
they get
continuum.
they get very little. They come up with an idea. They get in front of some angel investors, and if enough of them, in your case, 3 of them say, we like this idea, we're going to put some money into it. That's kind of the extent of the vetting. Once they're in it, they might be involved with an incubator and accelerator that's kind of giving them some mentoring and stuff like that. But they don't know, what kind of confrontations they're going to have to deal with when they get into this business. So we've created a game that startups play, number one. And we've identified 7 skills that if you're going to be a successful innovator, you better have your act together and be able to deliver on these 7 skills. And we put them in head-to-head competition. And it's not a fluffy show-and-tell kind of pitch event like most people are accustomed to. This is, I've got an idea, you've got an idea. I'm going to come after you and destroy you because I know what your weaknesses are. I'm going to expose those to everybody, and I'm going to come at you with my strengths. And you're going to do the same to me. Okay? Now, the reason we do that is not because we want to be mean. It's because that's what business is like. If I go into business and I start taking market share away from you, you're not just going to roll over and let me have it. You're going to tell all your customers all the things that are bad about my way of doing things, so they stick around and go with you. So that's the type of, and it's also much better entertainment. I mean, it's much
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
So have you prototyped and tested this with one-on-one competitions
Oh,
between
yeah.
entrepreneurs?
Oh yeah,
And
it's fun.
okay, and you might not have all 7 of those attributes that you just described, but what's a handful of those skills that you're trying to train,
Sure.
right?
Number one is creativity. What's your idea, which is what people are mostly accustomed to. Next is marketing and branding. You've got a cool idea, but can you tell the story in an effective way that gets people excited about your product? Number 3 is channel development. So we've got a great story to tell, but are you telling it to the right people? Do you have an efficient way to get your message out to those people? The next one is logistics, just kind of sales and operations. Do you have all the pieces together to make this operate efficiently? Then you have teams. You got the right people. Do you know how to build a good team? And then number 6 is impact. What are you doing that actually improves the world? That's going to make it, why should we even care about your business? And then number 7 is leadership. Can you see the big picture? So those are the 7 skills that we think, startups, if they're going to be successful, ought to be pretty good at.
And are these are one-on-one battles?
Oh yeah, and yeah. So it's branding and marketing against branding and marketing. It's leadership against leadership. So.
And how long? We're all familiar with boxing. 2 or 3 minute round. What have you found? What have you found is the right length of round?
A round is 5 minutes. You each get 2.5 minutes.
Okay, and
you don't usually take that whole 2.5 minutes consecutively.
Right.
I might go for a minute, and you might go for a minute, and I might come after you for 30 seconds. You come after me for 30 seconds, and I rebuttal, and so you've got it's a 5 minute round.
So using the principles that many of our children are using in the debate team, but rather than studying the topic for a long time and going into a debate, you're going to be more free flow. It sounds like.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Okay. And what's been your experience so far as you've had this first series of competitions?
Well,
how many entrepreneurs have had a chance to go at it so far?
What we're doing right now is we built a platform, and the platform is a whole lot more than these competitions. Joel mentioned the fantasy sports component, and I'm not answering your question very well, but
no, that's fine. No, I think I know where you're going with the answer.
But the fantasy sports component is, the way that the whole thing evolved was kind of interesting because my daughter, who had never watched a football game in her life, she got married and they usually come over for Sunday dinner, and all of a sudden she wanted to watch a football game, and I thought, what is this? You don't watch football. You grew up being a dancer. I mean, you're a ballerina. What's going on here? She says, I'm in a fantasy league. I just want to say, I thought, wow, that's powerful. How can we get that type of engagement and really expand the community of people that are supporting startups? Because all of a sudden my daughter had no interest in football, was now all of a sudden interested in football. So can we do that same kind of thing?
Because she liked the competitive nature of the fantasy league.
Yeah.
And so where you're taking that to then is almost a entrepreneur fantasy league.
Yeah, exactly.
Where the audience gets to bet on the entrepreneurs.
All of a sudden they've got a vested interest in the outcome of what's going on here.
Right.
What's the incentive for the company to participate? Why would an entrepreneur want to do this?
Okay, and that's a great question. Number one, entrepreneurs need a vetting system, and if they're going to fail, we want them to fail fast. Okay. That way, they haven't invested a bunch of time, a bunch of money from friends and family and investors. Get their idea out there. Let the community weigh in on it. And are they getting votes from we call them virtual venture capitalists, VVCs? They're not actually investing in anything. They're playing a game. They're paying an entry fee, and the VVCs can make up to a 7x return on their entry fee, and they can do it every week.
Okay.
You don't have to wait, 5 to 10 years to get a return on your investment. You can pay an entry fee, and if
Well, it actually builds on some of the things that Steve Blank and his colleagues at Stanford teach relative to nail it then scale it. And it's really get out of your office
Yep.
and go conduct enough interviews with potential customers, potential channel partners, potential collaborators, so that you know whether you've got product market fit.
Yeah,
right? And
exactly.
so here's an opportunity through kind of a competitive framework to allow people to
Yeah, see if you-
articulate
and see if you can find
those seven
that
elements
tribe.
of their
Yeah.
strategy.
Find that tribe. And the other cool thing is, it's not 8 minutes on Shark Tank. There's a lot of startups. I mean, over 100,000 startups want to be in Shark Tank every year.
Right.
But on our platform, you ask what's in it for the startups. It's an entire season of exposure. It's not just 8 minutes. By the time you get through that season, if you've got what it takes, you've been called up to the big leagues, and you're competing at that level. You can become a household brand. So
And without him, none of this would have happened.
Yeah.
I think that the carry-on is your URL as well.
7xusa.com.
Is this going to happen?
Oh yeah, it's happening.
Is there an alignment with this that can make things fun and help people learn so they can get to people like Ted?
Exactly.
All right.
Then let's make it happen.
7xusa.com coming to a theater near you.
It's functional right now. I'm going to let you go for a bit.
All right.
Thank you.
We're going to have Utah Rugby join us. And guys, I can't even tell you, that was fun. And if there's any way that I could turn back time like Sherry, and like to parts of that last segment.
Turn back time.
All right, bring it
I
on.
wanna find a way. I wanna. Don't know the way.
So you guys are after the Warriors, okay? All right, this is Joel McKay Smith with Accelerant Aspirability Otacon TV, I guess we could call it. We've had a great time the last couple of days. We've had a couple of parties. We've had a lot of exposure. We had an amazing bartender last night.
Her name is Roseanne. She served the drinks.
Yeah. For Utah, for Utah cannabis. It's all about community this year, guys. The communication that we're getting from Clint and everybody else at Silicon Slope Summit is community. So let's talk about the community of rugby players. I played a scrum back. Back with the Park City Muckers. I think that I went to one practice. The rest of it was drinking.
The Muckers.
Yes. And I had a bunch of buddies like Finiunga that used to play with United and stuff like that. So I have a long history with rugby, but